Hello and welcome to Focus on Liberia. Ansony Sieh, always your host. Another edition of the Hour of Politics. Welcome and welcome. And do us that usual favor, hit that share button. This discussion is a very sober one, and it is very important that Liberians find time to listen. The issues are serious. And when we are talking about advocacy should be serious, or the seriousness needed in any advocacy should be brought to bed. And I have a gentleman who has been on this journey of advocacy, not only for Liberians, even though he has devoted a huge portion of the advocacy for his people, Liberian people. He has also advocated for peace and security and harmony in the world. Reverend Torli Krua is my guest, and he is seated. The topic for today is how Ukrainian crisis overshadows American humanitarian crisis. There are crises in America. Liberians are Americans. Liberians are living in America. The crisis in Ukraine is impacting everything globally. How it impacts the crisis here in the US, if you know, it also affects Liberians. And we're going to talk about other things that affect Liberia, especially Liberians living in the United States, those of whom who also don't have our legal status or permanent legal status. Reverend Krua, I almost gave you a doctorate degree, Reverend Krua. No, he has also been advocating for that. And so, folks, welcome again. Let me not bore you with that too much introduction there. Let me welcome my guest, Reverend Torli Krua. Reverend, welcome, brother. It's good to have you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. And folks, I also want to say that our subtopic here going to be, it's time to invest in peaceful coexistence, not increasing military aid to the people of Ukraine, thinking that that's going to solve any problem. And that quote is also from our guest. Reverend, I can welcome you. How you doing? How is the family? I know COVID kind of took everybody by surprise. And I said that.
I'm doing very well. The family is well, thank God. We had touch with the COVID, but we have recovered. Mm-hmm. And I just thank God for this country, this great country, for allowing us to come here during a time of our conflict in our own country to seek refuge. And now we have become part of the society in this country. Mm-hmm. And what I think is that given the crisis going on in this country in terms of many dimensions, within Native American communities across the country, in the prison system in this country, the infrastructure of this country, broken infrastructure of this country, and all of these things happening, we are inching towards 1 million Americans dead, 1 million persons dead in the United States because of COVID. And that significant number has caused us to call the alarm. It's time to invest in peaceful solutions and not increasing military aid to Ukraine.
Thank you. So, folks, you heard him. There are crises here in the U.S., but it has become like the whole approach of the U.S. government, like Ukraine, even the Western media, all you hear about is Ukraine, and we see the billions flying in Ukraine, military aid flying in Ukraine, as though that is the only problem facing the world. And the almighty America is doing everything for Ukraine when they know very well that there has never been a war won on the battlefield. Even those ones people say they won on the battlefield, the scars are not, healed on the battlefield. Those scars, people have to come home and that will be resolution. So how is this war in Ukraine impacting the entire world, Americans here, and also concerns that many people have around the world? Robin Krua, let's get started here with the issue. The topic here is how Ukraine crisis overshadow American humanitarian crisis. So what is the humanitarian crisis you see in America that the US is not giving attention and has been overshadowed by the crisis in Ukraine?
Today, about 22% of our country's 5.2 million Native Americans live in tribal homelands in the United States. Most people come to this country, go to school, purchase home, and never step foot in American Indian reservations. People are living in a situation that is comparable to conditions in third world countries. And that is a problem in the United States. We
Folks,
have,
okay.
And so that is a problem with the prison system. We have gun violence in this country. Mm-hmm. That is a problem in this country. And if you want to look at American democracy, the place to look is the Republic of Liberia. Mm-hmm. This is a country created by the United States of America. Mm-hmm. If you look at the flag, it's red, white, and blue, mm-hmm. a replica of the United States flag. But go to West Point in Monrovia, and you will see exactly the condition of American democracy in the world. Besides that, we have a crisis of humanitarian proportions happening right here in the United States, where over 6,000 Liberians who are refugees of war, refugees protected under international law, mm-hmm. living in the United States in winter, in the COVID pandemic, where almost 1 million people have been killed. And the United States government has not been compassionate enough to give these people permits to work. Liberians living here do not have permits to work. We have the Liberian Refugee Fairness Act that gives a lot of Liberians a chance to be able to work. But unlike other countries who, when they get similar legislation, anyone in the United States on American soil on the day that that law is passed, they all are covered. In the case of Liberia, it was taking 5 years behind. And so we have a crisis of people. We have a situation where even when we have war in Liberia, two more things I'll mention and then I'll stop. When we have war in Liberia, the United States evacuated American citizens, many young children, brought them here to the United States. Upon arrival, the United States government, under Democrats and Republicans, refused to give these new arriving Liberian refugees of war with American children. They refused to give them permits to work for years. Under Democrats, under Republicans, we had to take that matter to court, in which the court case went against us because the people were afraid. The last thing is, today we have a situation right here where the United States government is giving humanitarian aid to refugees in Poland. Already today, they have given a chance for Ukrainian refugees coming here to be allowed to work. Afghan refugees coming here were allowed to work before they even arrived. But the Liberians that have been living here for years with children have not been able to be covered with the Liberian Fairness Act. Now, I believe it's time for the President of the United States to take the lead in doing the most significant thing. We are talking about international order. International order is based on international law. But the United States government has not been able to sign and rectify a lot of these international treaties and conventions that make up the international order of peace and security. So going to give a lot of money to Ukraine when the United States has not been able to sign and rectify, for example, the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture, the Civil Law Convention on Corruption, the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, etc. A lot of these pillars that form the international order has not been signed or rectified by the United States, but we are sending billions of dollars to Ukraine in arms, and that money was not budgeted from last year. That money is something that has to be paid by us taxpayers and by our children in years to come.
Thank you. Let's take the issue one by one, because what I'm hearing from you is there have been problems here that are serious enough that the United States either play lip service to or probably and refuse to pump in the necessary money, but is pumping so much billions in a crisis that started just over a little month ago, when the US have had these many crises on its hands for generations. That's what I'm hearing from you. So let's take them one by one. Let's talk about the issue of status for people who moved here several years ago and have been working either temporarily and paying taxes to the US government, people that gave in the US government money. The US government more has less or no interest in regularizing their statuses so that they can be able to contribute. These are people that are willing to contribute anyway. The US giving a little or nothing, but it's giving billions to a crisis that just happened yesterday. Talk to me about that. How is that true?
Well, first of all, the United States government, I have to give them credit, passed a bill that was signed by President Donald Trump called the Liberian Refugee Immigration Fairness Act. That law allowed all Liberians that have been in this country up to November 20, 2014 to regularize their status and to even apply for citizenship. The problem with the Fairness Act is that before the Liberians were given the Fairness Act, Chinese were given similar status. When they came in 1989, they were immediately given DE, temporary status. They were immediately transferred to green card, and they became American citizens. Salvadorans, 150,000 Salvadorans. And all these people were given status, but for all of them, their status is granted to people who are in the United States on the date that the law is passed. In the case of Liberians, it says November 20, 2014, which is good. The problem is there were a whole lot of people who came after that date. And I know personally people that have approached me that came after that date from Liberia because of the war, and they have never been given the same status. So they're living here. Some of them are on depression pills. They want to kill themselves. Charity begins at home. If the United States cannot respect international law to grant asylum seekers in the United States and refugees in the United States, all of them, to give them permits to work, what we do overseas is not really going to cut it.
But Reverend Krua, to the credit of the U.S., though, you talk about the Fairness Act that is granting Liberians a green card status.
Yeah.
And once they obtain that green card status, they will be on their way to applying for U.S. citizens. So that is something significant. But you hold on now. But you even went further by criticizing this, because you said, well, how you give a refugee, all right, a status, and then you asking them to pay. I mean, what's wrong with people paying for the status that will benefit them?
Because according to Section 245I of the United States Immigration and Nationality Act, refugees are exempt from paying filing fees for green card. Jews didn't pay, Somalis didn't pay, a whole bunch of people didn't pay who came here as refugees. And therefore, so if you're filing a law that's called Refugee Fairness Act, it has to be consistent with the law that grants refugees waiver in paying fees for green card, number one. Number two, after the Liberians were required to pay, people who have not worked for decades were required to pay, then came Afghanistan when they had to evacuate Afghans. Before they even stepped here, they said, we waive the fees for the Afghans. What is the difference between Liberians and Afghans? I mean, you cannot, the United States Constitution, the 14th Amendment calls for equal protection. And
the fairness here is, the fairness in the act yet, these Liberians have been granted this pathway to the legal status. They came on visiting visa and decided to stay, which is a violation of the U.S. law. So now they are saying you are in violation, but we're going to treat you like fellow human beings. So we're going to pass the law, and you're going to apply for it, and then you will get a legal status. How is that not fair?
Because the title of the bill is not illegal status bill. It's called Liberian Refugee Fairness Act. The bill was enacted because there was a war that was started right here in Boston, where I live. The war started in Boston, and it was transported to Liberia. And all of the warlords are free to move about. I mean, many of the warlords lived in America. They had green cards. Some of them even had U.S. citizenship. And they were going and carrying this violence in Liberia. And the United States government never sanctioned a single one of them during the war, 14 years of war. They were able to move back and forth safely. If you have one standard for warlord from Liberia, then you need to honor your own law. That law was not written by me. The 245I wasn't written by me. It was an act of the United States Congress. So they have to be willing to abide by the rule. One more thing I have to say in addition to that. During the war in Liberia, at the United States Embassy, the State Department sent a classified cable to the embassy telling them to deny every single Black Liberian that was trying to come to this country visa, but give visa to Lebanese and Indian people. That was a violation of the law. And that thing caused a lot of people who lived in this country and went back home. And trying to come back here, a lot of people died. So the United States has not been fair at all in dealing with Liberian people from the very beginning up until now. And I believe charity begins at home. That is why President Biden has to take the leadership, stand up and not just talk about the international, taking Putin to the International Criminal Court. Let President Biden be a man and help to sign and rectify the international convention, the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. The United States is not part of it at all. So how can you come and try to persecute Putin when you haven't even signed up to what makes up the international order? It has to be done. And right now, those of us from villages in Africa who are living here now need to be the voice for freedom. We need to be the voice for peace. Those of us who fled civil war, we need to be the voice for the voiceless. And if we don't speak out, shame on us, because we should have been dead. But God opened a way for us to come here.
The question then becomes, Reverend Krua, here we are Liberians, either living in the U.S. or in Liberia. We have our own volume of problems. The U.S. is helping the people of Ukraine with their crisis. How is that in any way our problem? That's the question. What will you say?
When President Biden says we're giving $8 billion or whatever to Ukraine, he's not saying that this was part of the budget. That money is going directly to the military establishment in this country. The military industrial complex are being enriched. And who's going to pay? Our children will pay tomorrow. Our unborn children will pay in decades to come. We ourselves will pay in taxes now. And so that investment of billions of dollars in arms that is making the arm factories rich in America is not at all pushing towards peace in our war, because as long as one innocent person dies, then later on you go sit on table to end the war. Those people who have died in vain. And so how I say against us is against us because it's taking away resources that's supposed to be used to fight crimes in this place. It's taking away resources that should be used to help Native Americans in reservations to have a better quality of life in the United States.
But Reverend Krua, you and I experienced war. Our country experienced war. We know that when people are in war, especially when the humanitarian crisis is all over the place, the only thing one would need is the help they can get from wherever they can get it from. So the U.S. is helping the people of Ukraine. Similar help we get, even though not at similar volume. Is your issue also with how much help is being given Ukraine as compared to what was given Liberia, and how much help is being given to Ukraine compared to the issues that are serious here on the ground here in the U.S.? What is your qualm?
All of the above. Before the Ukraine war started, there was war going on in Ethiopia. Thousands of atrocities, people were killed. We didn't see it on the news as it is being portrayed in Ukraine.
Right.
you know, this type of thing that's going on, if I was in Ukraine, I would not, you know, I will call for help. But as a Christian person, I'm going to call for peace. I'm going to call for a peaceful settlement because all wars will end on the negotiation table. But there is no need for one person or even two people to die innocently before people get to the table. If the amount of money that has been poured into war was poured into peace, I believe by now this war would have been resolved. Because Russia was an ally of the United States during the Second World War. And Russia has been an ally of the United States since the Soviet Union fell in helping to solve problems in other places. And even in the Iranian issue with the nuclear weapon in Iran right now. And so people need to find a way. And one of the reasons why just killing people is not the best way to go is because all human beings are sinners. All men are completely gone astray. There is none righteous, no, not one. So if we have to take the solution of wars that enriches the weapons companies, we are not going to go anywhere. It becomes like a tournament. Every year we have NBA tournament, we have the baseball tournament, etc. People sit and watch it, but the owners of the company make the money. That's exactly what's going on in the arms race. Today, the defense budget of the United States is higher than Russia, China, India, Saudi Arabia, 11 countries. Has that made us safe? There's mass shootings going on in our country, the United States. It has not made us safe. There's still poverty, crippling poverty here going on.
So what you suggest should be done with that 800 billion the U.S. spends on national defense every year? I mean, just use it to fight crimes in areas like Chicago and invest in maybe poor communities so that people can have access to crime-prone communities. Is that the solution there?
Well, before we reach to the money thing, there is something that we can do with our money. That is signing these treaties that hundreds of countries have signed. How is the United States going to lead the world of an international order of peace and security when we haven't signed the Convention on Torture, the Civil Law Convention on Corruption, the Rome Statute on International Criminal Court, the optional protocol to the Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women? For God's sake, if we can't sign these things that cost no money to sign, how can we lead the world? We are not leading the world.
Well, Reverend Krua, there are other countries, there are other countries that signed the treaties, Liberia, for example. I'm sure you are following what's unfolding in Liberia. People are dying mysteriously and nothing has happened. So just signing a piece of paper, I don't see how it commits ones to abide by it if the person does not see the significance. If they don't see the significance, why should they sign in the first place?
You can talk about international order without international law. And so if you're not committed to international law as the United States, it's not in many of these cases that I'm citing, the United States cannot come and talk about war crime court for Putin. They undermine the international order, number one. The situation with Liberia is totally different. Liberia is a country, in my opinion, that needs to be liberated and needs to get independent because the name Liberia didn't come from us. When the Gold Coast became independent, the Africans named their country Ghana. When Rhodesia became independent, the Africans named their country Zimbabwe. But in Liberia, that Liberia thing was created in the United States and taken over there, and it has not worked for the people there at all because the United States.
You don't like the name Liberia? I think it's a beautiful name. If we change the name, I don't think it changes our situation, right?
No, I'm not talking about changing the name only. I'm only saying that free people are free to think and choose. Slaves were branded. When you own a slave, you brand the slave with your name. It was not the choice of the slave as to what name he got. And so what I'm saying is, if we are an independent country, we need to be able to have independence to give ourselves define our own values system. But if you were branded a slave and then they said now you're independent and you walk around with the same branded name on your back, you really
The sense I'm getting from all of this also is that the United States has not done well for Liberia, or it's a disappointment to Liberia compared to how Liberians in Liberia is a disappointment to itself. Am I reading that right?
the way I look at it is this. The United States in Liberia, like the Liberian government has international partners. Most of the top officials of government of Liberia carry American green card and American passport. I know this for a fact. And the United States has a way of dealing with people who carry American passports and American green card. Yet we have a situation where a lot of the people who corrupt and steal have nowhere else to have a haven except the United States of America. And so we have a situation where these people don't even go for visa, but every year the United States Embassy makes millions of dollars denying Liberians visa when the Article 1 of the 1824 Constitution says all persons born in Liberia are entitled to all privileges enjoyed by Americans. Today, 40 countries come to America without visa. 57 countries come here to work temporarily. 5 territories controlled by the United States. They come here for education, for employment, and for business opportunities.
Don't you think that is on our leaders and it is not on America? Because the countries you are talking about, their leaders negotiated for those things.
Well, the 40 countries negotiated, the 57 countries negotiated, but the 5 territories didn't negotiate, was taken over by the United States, and the United States was able to do those things. Right now, we have a movement called the Free Liberia Movement, where we're calling on the citizens, those who vote for the president, those who vote for lawmakers who make laws to get salaries that's higher than the salary of Nancy Pelosi here in the United States.
Right.
We are getting these people to vote for themselves by making a demand of the United States government and of the Liberian government to make sure that we change the situation in the Republic of Liberia.
But don't you think if the U.S. just decide to grant Liberians visa waiver without the leaders of Liberia negotiating for it, don't you think then the U.S. is being selective here? Because after all, we are not the only partner of the U.S. government.
No, what I'm talking about is that the creation of Liberia was done against the laws of the United States of America. And what we're talking about is that these people, the opposition politicians already have green card and U.S. citizenship. Independent politicians already have green card and U.S. citizenship. The president, the president's wife, everybody. So why should you squeeze the poor people out of education, employment, and business opportunity when the top few people have that same opportunity? When in fact the Constitution says everyone in Liberia is supposed to be entitled to it. So you don't need the government officials to negotiate because the people have a will. The people are able to make a demand. In any country, the government.
The law you quoting, that was Liberia's, I think, first constitution. We have changed our constitution, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 2 times now. Yeah. So that law does not apply anymore, isn't it?
No, it does apply because from the first constitution, okay, take this analogy. When you buy a car and you own the title to the car, there's a legal way of transferring title. That has not been done in Liberia at all. So the first constitution says all persons born in Liberia are entitled to privileges enjoyed by American citizens because the country was established in a denigrated the color of the skin of the people. So they were creating America in Africa. That's what they were trying to do. So that first constitution didn't have any provision on it, but the second constitution said all laws that are enacted now will remain in force. I mean, all laws enacted prior, that prior constitution will remain in force until they are abrogated by this constitution or by the legislature. It didn't happen in the first case. The second constitution that you're talking about also recognized what has been done before and said anything that we have not canceled remains in force. And so the name remained in force, and the status of Liberia being the only country where only black people can be citizens, remain enforced. And so all these things continue until it is changed by somebody, and it has never been changed.
So here's the thing. I like the analogy you gave about Kaitaro. If you were transferring, your car title to me is more like taking ownership of the car. All right. So I will have to enjoy the benefits of the car because I have acquired the car by a title transfer. By that, I'm saying we got a new constitution that completely departed from the old constitution and everything thereof. Now you are making the case that, well, it was not abrogated. When our lawmakers adopted a new constitution, when we adopted a new constitution, we have thrown away all other things.
You want me to read it for you?
No, you read it earlier. I'm just begging you to prove your point.
I can read it for you because the Constitution of 1847, what it did, it excluded every single person that was indigenous in Liberia from the Republic of Liberia.
Right.
Indigenous people were not part of the Republic of Liberia, but the Republic of Liberia became an entity in the beginning, and it continued to that point. And that republic was not really a republic because it did not include everyone. It was not a democracy because democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The second constitution they had the right to come and say, well, we don't want to have anything to do with the 1824 Constitution or the 1847 Constitution. We are going to have our own name. We're going to have our own whatever. No, they wrote there specifically that anything that we have not abrogated remains in force from the old Constitution. That's what I'm saying. It's like you go to a house that has a deed given to somebody and you just occupy it. It's not yours. The deed, the original owner of the deed has to transfer it. Otherwise, that's the way it is.
Folks, this is Focus on Liberia. I'm Ansony Sieh hosting. My guest is Reverend Torli Krua. He is a human rights activist based here in the U.S. He goes to Liberia regularly. He is from the Universal Human Rights International. Reverend Krua, going back to this Ukraine crisis in which the U.S. is pumping more money than we've ever seen, you are saying the strategies that has been used now to say, well, more military aid and just supply them and then let them engage the Russian on the battlefield and the war will be won there. It's not a good strategy. It's like throwing money at the problem. Then when you want to negotiate with somebody, you have to negotiate from a position of strength. If Ukraine, with the help of US and NATO, cannot engage Putin for being this vicious militarily, how would they be able to negotiate with him from a position of strength?
Look, no war has brought peace, lasting peace on earth. No war. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, unprovoked. They attacked Pearl Harbor and killing 2,403 Americans, destroying 19 United States vessels, naval ships. United States responded by detonating 2 nuclear bombs in Japan. Over 200,000 people perished. No war has brought lasting peace to this world. And you can go on and on. On September 11, when bin Laden attacked the United States, they killed over 2,977 Americans. United States, and there were about 19 of those people came from Saudi Arabia. The United States attacked the base of bin Laden, which was Afghanistan, 20 years of war, $2 trillion, so many people killed. And the Taliban are in charge today. No war is going to bring lasting peace on earth. And so what we need to do, and for the past 2 years, COVID has killed nearly 1 million Americans. And the way to protect these Americans, in this case, is within the community, because it spreads from human being to human being. And the COVID virus does not discriminate. This person has a green card, I'm going to let him go. This person has American citizenship. It passes from human being to human beings. We have a situation now where 1 million people are going to die in the United States. And President Biden can do something about it by granting the asylum seekers that are here, don't have health insurance, don't have permits to work in America. President Biden can protect Americans by ensuring that everyone in this country is able to do it. But the military-industrial complex, they have lobbyists in Washington, and all they want is more money to the factories, more money, more deadly weapons to be created. That's all they do. And when they do that, the money is not coming from the budget. They just take money, and we're going to keep paying it years and centuries to come. It didn't bring peace. It wouldn't bring peace. And then we have a risk of nuclear war. What do we get from fighting a nuclear war? Japan didn't gain anything from it. If we have nuclear war, it's going to affect us because the missiles in Russia is pointed at us. We have to take the interest of Americans. That is peaceful engagement. If we spend $8 billion to bring peace, I'm telling you, by now we could have peace already. We're spending more money for arms and ammunition because of the military-industrial complex and the lobbyists and all of the media institutions. Every single one of them, the only thing they talk about is Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Oh, the people are killing. This is happening over there. Go to Ethiopia right now. See how many people are dying in Ethiopia. What's the difference? Go to DR Congo. Go to Somalia. All these different places.
Reverend Krua, I heard and read somewhere that no matter what political reasons are given for war, the underlying reason is always economic. Does that apply to the crisis in Ukraine, in which Ukraine is receiving so much goodwill, even over Americans and facing challenges, Liberians and Liberia facing challenges here?
Yes, and Jean-Pierre, a French philosopher, also said, when the rich wage wars, it's the poor who die. Right now, because of the war in Ukraine, prices of gasoline is up, price of food is up all over the world. And we need to look at it, the solution that we find. If we have to use military solution to knock out North Korea, for example, because of the brutality of the North Korean regime, use military force to knock out the Russians because the whole humanity, because the human race have this problem of sin and ill will, you're going to have to knock out the whole world, and you still wouldn't have peace in the world. And so we have to find a different way other than this business of people advertising arms and ammunition as a way of solving problems. It has not solved any problem, and it's not going to solve any problem at all. And you know, the more the media put up the hype of what's happening over there, over what's happening in other places, people think that this is the worst humanitarian catastrophe that has ever happened. We have to go there, and to stop it, we have to fight. They're fighting in the living rooms of the Ukrainian people. Their cities have been destroyed right now. But the most important thing is innocent people are dying in Ukraine that don't need to die. And what's going to happen? Let me just say one more thing.
Right.
Jamal Khashoggi, the Saudi dissident that lived in Washington a few years ago, went to Turkey, walked into the Saudi embassy. They took him, killed him, cut him into pieces. There was an outcry from the human rights community, but nothing was done to Saudi Arabia for what they did up until now. And so, we're going to go attack them. Now Saudi is bombing Yemen. This war has gone on for a long time. People are dying. What's the solution? Are we going to arm the Saudis, or are we going to arm the Yemenis? There has to be a better way. And these companies that are making the arms and ammunition, I believe, and with all of their lobbyists in Washington, I believe the cost, while our children will continue to spend all this money paying for the debt of war, when other countries are investing in, I think it's even in the interest of Ukraine to focus on economic development as opposed to arming itself, as the Russians have stated. But that's not for me to say.
So
Russia was wrong. Russia was wrong to use aggression in Ukraine. Russia is wrong. Russia will always be wrong. And any country who takes military force is also wrong.
So what are the options given the huge humanitarian crisis in the US and in other countries? that actually really need the U.S. to intervene, and the U.S. has not intervened, even if it did on a minimal level, and is just pumping this so much money in Ukraine. I mean, does it mean the U.S. is being selective?
The problem is that the people who need to open their mouth and speak are not saying anything, from the Pope down to whoever it is out there.
Mhm.
People will always not want to be the one to say something that is not popular. Right now, it's popular to say, let's fight, let's fight. It's always popular to say, let's fight. But
Mhm.
fighting has not brought peace anywhere in the world. You know, like in this country, as President Donald Trump says, we have our Second Amendment right. We need to buy guns. I went to a friend of mine house in Indiana. He's a Christian man who used to work as a missionary.
Mhm.
He had over 100 guns in his house. I said, what are you going to do with these? He said, oh, our Second Amendment rights say we have to buy guns to defend ourselves. Well, we have $800 billion from the government to defend you. You have to buy 100 guns by yourself. I mean, the flooding of guns in our communities have brought more mass shooting, not safety. The same way in the world, this fighting and killing has brought more and more pain. Innocent people die. People lose their limbs and family members. And it's not right.
So, Reverend
People
Krua,
need to speak
looking
out.
at the seriousness, hold on, looking at the seriousness of this onslaught being carried on against the people of Ukraine, and also looking at the serious crisis that you see here in the US, in other countries, Liberia in particular, our home country that the US have traditional ties with, right? If you were advising President Biden, how will you advise him to approach the crisis in Ukraine, the crisis here in the US, and the crisis in Liberia, so that there's not war in Ukraine and these crises in both countries, Liberia and the US, are resolved? What would be your advice to him?
The first thing I'll tell President Biden is history is going to prove this.
Mhm.
President Biden needs to make a statement, public statement, to say we support the international order of peace and security in the world. We will sign and rectify all of these protocols that I just mentioned that the United States has not signed at all. The protocol to the Convention Against Torture, the Civil Law Convention on Corruption, the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. President Biden needs to do it. Obama didn't do it. President Bush didn't do it. Let Biden come out and do that. He doesn't have to pay money to do that. If President Biden doesn't do it, then other countries are looking at the United States leading by example. They don't sign the International Criminal Court order. We're not going to sign, we're not going to respect International Criminal Court.
And Reverend Krua, how would this solve this crisis?
United States has attacked other countries, so we're going to, United States attack Grenada, United States Panama, United States, so they're going to do the same thing. But the way to do it, number one, is to honor the international order, sign up to these things. That's number one. Number two, we have people dying in the United States because the virus is moving from one person to another. And the best solution is to mask up. The best solution is also for people to have health insurance, for people to not be living crowded in one place. People in Native American communities are living in crowded situations.
Are you suggesting President Biden and the U.S. government has not done enough for Americans and America in the fight against COVID?
They have not done enough because right now, maternal mortality in the United States is lower than any industrialized country. That's one of the problems, that's one of the indicators.
So what would be enough for you?
What's going to be enough for me is we have to honor the international treaties. Like we say we want to do that, International Criminal Court. We need to honor that and be fair and lead by example, number one. Number two, grant a complete temporary work permit to everyone in the United States as long as this pandemic lasts. And then number three, this business of investing.
Why not permanent? I mean, you are crying war, yeah, and then you want a temporary. Why not permanent?
Because the pandemic, when the pandemic came, prisoners were let out of jail to save lives. We're talking about a temporary solution. It's an emergency public health intervention. That's why I'm saying that.
Okay.
When the pandemic is no longer here, that's going to be a topic for another day. But we have a situation where right now in prison, because of the crowded situation, some prisons were opening the door to let people out of the prison just to save life. And we cannot look. China has 1.44 billion people. How many persons have died in China from the pandemic? Less than 5,000. How many people have died in the United States? Almost 1 million. When 2,000 Americans were killed by bin Laden, we went to war for 20 years. Now 1 million people dying and Biden is doing nothing. You can't do that.
No. I don't think that is fair to say nothing, Reverend Krua.
When I say nothing, I mean those people who are asylum seekers in this country who cannot work, who don't have health insurance, people who fled wars and are now living in this country.
But COVID vaccine is free for all. It doesn't matter your status in U.S., isn't it?
I'm not talking about the vaccination. I'm talking about intervention to mitigate the pandemic.
Okay.
In terms of spreading from person to person. That's
all
what
right.
I'm talking about.
Well, folks, Reverend Krua is my guest here, and he's talking tough. We are talking about the crisis in Ukraine. Is the U.S. government showing more goodwill for the people of Ukraine over its own citizen here and the problems and crisis here in the U.S.? And we are adding our home country, Liberia, because we know how we are somehow tied together. Liberia is a very poor country. Its budget is not even up to $1 billion. The U.S. Congress has just approved $14 billion for a crisis, folks, that has lasted for less than 2 months. Liberia had its own crisis that lasted for over 14 years. I don't remember the U.S. government saying, hey, this is $10 billion for Liberia. It's the U.S. showing more love for the people of Ukraine. And if that it is, why are they doing this?
They are doing it for one reason.
For its own people here. Hold on, Reverend. We have people have been crushed by student debt here. America is dragging its feet, but it's just dishing out billions. Reverend Krua is not happy with the U.S. government. Go ahead, Reverend.
What I'm saying is there's one problem that's been ignored in this country.
Mm-hmm.
When you create something, it doesn't just die like that. You got to undo it. On March 26, 1790, the Congress of the United States passed a law that said the color of the skin of white people was more important, more than the color of skin of brown and black people. Mm-hmm. That law that was made by Congress is no longer on the books, but it continued to ravage lives in Native American communities. It ravages life of Americans, descendants of Americans that had to be removed and taken to Liberia. It ravaged the lives of indigenous Liberians, and it continues to ravage the lives of people today. And nobody in Congress, not a single person in Congress, has been able to say those racists that passed the law to say the color of the skin determines the quality of human being, of humanity in a person. On March 26, 1790, the first apartheid law in modern history was not in South Africa. That law needs to be mitigated. But today,
are you suggesting it's because of that law?
Well, yes.
The U.S. government is pumping more money into Ukraine because they got white skin and have given little to Liberia and even pumping less money in minority communities here in the U.S.?
Yes, I say that because I have evidence.
So what's your evidence?
This is my evidence. Nowhere in the records of the United States Congress has the United States Congress acted. They acted. It was an act of the United States Congress on March 26th. Mm-hmm. The Congress needs to act another law that mitigates the harm that was created by that law that denigrated the skin of people. They can't make human beings in this country, and they have no right to denigrate the color of a particular person. But today we have Congress that has descendants of slaves, descendants of refugees, descendants of prisoners, descendants of people from all sorts of different places. And those people don't have the backbone to say, let's mitigate the harm that was caused by this law. One of the things that I am pushing for now is to get people to raise their voices. There's a reason for everything that happens. And this particular law and the harm it caused and continues to cause is part of the reason why the United States is going to put our country in debt to give money to the weapons industry here.
Sorry there. I was just saying the US Senate just confirmed a person of color to sit on the Supreme Court bench. The people of America, along with, elected a black woman as vice president. In the US, a black man served as president. The list is endless. To say that the little that we see going to people of color is more so because of the laws that were passed, yes, is to say that no progress has been made. What will you say?
Oh, no, progress has been made. And you have to understand that the progress is made in two ways. One, the progress is made through the court. It was not until 1954 in this country that Brown versus Board of Education ended discrimination. Mm-hmm. And even as Brown versus Board of Education ended discrimination, institutions like Bob Jones University, a Christian organization, continue to deny black people from going there, to go, admitting black people in that school for many, many years, for many, many decades. You have to be able to enact laws that mitigate the harm. The civil rights law that we have in this country, after the civil rights law was enacted, you still have countries, you still have people, right now as I speak to you, majority of the missionaries that work in Liberia are white, going to serve a population that's black.
I don't think they are denying black people from going to serve foreign nations.
No, I'm saying that organizations that are tax exempt, missionary agencies that are tax exempt, that work in places to serve black people are not diverse on their board or their senior management. So they will have to take a white person to send them to Liberia to head the operation of Samaritan Purse, for example. What did God do when God decided to reach out to humanity? Someone like a human being came in human flesh. But when you have to always send a white person, then we need laws to.
But Reverend, I thought color should not matter at this time, isn't it? Because U.S. is predominantly white. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations is a black woman. So I don't think we should look at who is serving in what capacity and where. Or we should just look at the humanity. Even Dr. King said that we should not, read the color of the skin, but the content of the character.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Look, I know Ambassador Greenfield. I've met her a couple of times and spoken with her. She's representing United States interests at the United Nations and not black people interests or Indian people interests. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that today the United States regulates sports organizations not to have discrimination within sports.
Right.
They regulate entertainment not to have discrimination in entertainment. They regulate companies. Even there was a situation where there was a gay couple in Colorado that wanted to buy something. They regulate even in business. What is wrong with regulating in the nonprofit sector, including places of worship? I think if you want to serve predominantly people of color, if you are created to serve people of color, you cannot just be all white. It doesn't make sense. That's what I'm saying.
Well, at the same time, we are black people here in the U.S. We are serving in predominantly white established businesses, and some of those businesses are headed by black folks, isn't it? I think we are somewhere, Reverend Krua. I think because the U.S. has created this competition, and no competition has bottlenecks those, but we have seen successes of black people. So I think we are in a much better place. I don't think we should push ourselves harder. We should succeed. Do you see some bottlenecks, some issues that are stopping black people?
Oh, let me show you one example. Right now, the governor of Massachusetts, His Excellency Charlie Baker, he just allocated $10 million for refugees from Ukraine coming to Massachusetts. But there are already organizations that are ready to grab that $10 million and use it. How many of them are led by Black people? How many of them are even led by refugees? That is the problem I'm talking about. When you have a system that only caters to the elite, then the people who are the underclass people will continue.
Who created those organizations that the 10 million that has been set aside for the needs of the refugee? Who set up those organizations?
So if you look at all of the top refugee organizations in the United States, it's not headed by any refugee. So if you ask me just now to produce 5 refugees with PhD that could head those places, I can bring 10. But
so maybe the solution should be we Black people should set up similar organizations and head them.
No, that's not what I'm saying. We need regulation. If you're going to have a basic traffic in the city, you need traffic lights for regulation. You can't say we're not going to have any traffic light. What is the justification for not having traffic light at a basic intersection where you have a lot of vehicles and pedestrians crossing? You need to have a traffic light. That's what we're talking about. But right now, you go to African countries, you have a lot of NGOs. They have good intentions, but there's a saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Good intentions are good. We need regulation, government regulations, just how we have it in other sectors. We need it in the nonprofit sector also.
You said democracy isn't what government or politicians do.
No.
It is what ordinary people do.
Yes.
But throughout this discussion, you have been like, look, these leaders are not doing this. These leaders are setting out bottlenecks. These leaders are channeling funds to special interests when they are trying to make us to believe that the funds they're setting aside for ordinary people. So maybe our fight now should be about educating the ordinary people for them to take action. Talk to me about that.
That's exactly what I'm doing. So you go to www.freeliberia.org, and we're trying to educate people that can do something. In Liberia, there are millions of people with receipts, $160 receipt from millions of people whose money have been taken by the United States Embassy in a way that is not fair at all. And those people, we are trying to organize them to have a voice for themselves. Bring all of the receipts together, and we're going to take it to the U.S. Embassy in Monrovia, and we're going to take it to the United States Congress and take it to the White House. We want to be the voice of the people. That's one thing. Right here in Boston, the government officials don't even know what we've gone through. They don't even know the type of villages we came from. We have to be the voice of our villages. We need to tell them that by taking $800 or $14 billion to send to Ukraine to stop or to fuel a war, that's not how you do it. Some of these people don't know. They need us to be able to stand, but we can't do it with just one person speaking. We have to be able to come together. That is why in Boston, we are coming together on the day that 1 million people, it clocks 1 million dead Americans, to make an appeal to our elected officials and to President Biden, to tell him President Biden has to sign these international protocols and conventions that other countries, hundreds of countries have signed, that Clinton didn't sign, that Bush didn't sign, that Obama didn't sign, that Donald Trump didn't sign. We're calling, if you're going to lead the world, you cannot lead the world in a chaotic situation with disregard for international law. That's what's happening in the United States. And pouring money in the pockets of these manufacturers in the United States who are ready and willing to compete with arm manufacturers in China and in Russia is not going. It's going to create more dead people, more dead children around the world, and we don't need to do that. We have the experience. We are the only ones who can speak some truth and some sense to the government of the United States. President Biden hasn't slept in a refugee camp. He doesn't know what it means to go hungry. He does not. If we shut up, you know what I like about this? I'm going to tell you. During the Palm Sunday service, when Jesus is riding on a donkey into Jerusalem, the Prince of Peace, the Pharisees can say, Tell your disciples to just shut up. He said, if these people shut up, even the stones that people are crushing under their feet, the stones will raise up their voices. It's time for us, those of us with villages, to stand up and speak. And we can't do it one by one. We have to come together, because if we don't do it, the media will. The media, look at the TV. Sometimes it's difficult to watch because it's just the same thing over and over and over and over. And Donald Trump will start saying this is fake news. You know, it's not okay. But so they cannot do it. We have to raise our voices.
Reverend Krua, thank you. That the core of your argument here is, look, there is more love being shown to Ukraine and the people of Ukraine. And you are saying, even though I understand the in crisis, they are at a point of need, but there are equally serious issues here. And even by pumping money, giving weapons to Ukraine, you are fueling and supporting a war that is having an impact on the people you claim to love. For example, gas prices are in the roof now because of the sanctions and the war that are going on in Ukraine. Americans are spending more now for gas. Liberians are spending more than for gas. So the U.S. strategy here, in your opinion, is not best. So here's my question. How can the United States, let's do it one by one, show more love for the people of Liberia right now? What are the things can the U.S. do to show more love? And then we'll come to the Americans.
Priority begins at home.
Okay.
The Liberians that are in the United States today that don't have permits to work in the United States, when the United States is giving permits to work to Afghans and people from Ukraine, those Liberians are human beings, and all of them need to be included in the Liberian Refugee Fairness Act. The United States cannot boast of democracy anywhere if it refuses to respect the rights of poor asylum seekers in the United States that are destitute, without health insurance, without permits to work, without access to humanitarian assistance. It's a shame on everybody, including the American ambassador at the United Nations, because she knows about that also. And I have to say that it's a shame. They eat every day. They drink water every day, and they deprive these Liberians, because that war in Liberia started right here in the United States, and America was doing the same thing, sending weapons. You can send weapons to Liberia, but not support the human beings who survived the war. It's a shame.
So is that all the U.S. can do for Liberia?
You start from here. Charity begins at home. And then going back to Liberia, where we have the situation over there, the government of Liberia, like I said, the top officials all have American passports. Most of them have American passport, American green card. And their salary is higher than the salary of Nancy Pelosi and even the president of the United States. That inequity needs to be addressed by the United States, who sustain that government with foreign aid. You cannot give foreign aid to a country.
Reverend Krua, do you think the U.S. has spent more money to support Ukraine during its time of war now compared to what is spent when Liberia needed America most? Do you believe that? Or do you know that?
I know that like America has spent more money on Ukraine, because in their mind, they have these weapon companies that are lobbying them. In their minds, they are fighting the, injustice. They are not fighting injustice, because in Liberia is where they should have gone to do more for the people in Liberia. They're human beings that will survive. How long did it take the United States government to even grant the Liberian refugee status? It took almost 14 years.
Are you saying the U.S. also fight these wars or supports these wars based on lies?
Lies like what?
Well, like, I heard you one other time talking about the war in Iraq. I heard you talking about the war in Libya, and you know, they gave some explanations as the reason why they needed to intervene even in Afghanistan. But it was more so about something else, maybe a show of power. So tell me that is not a lie.
No. So what I think is that the military machines is, if you are manufacturing these guns and bombs and deadly weapons, You got to find a way to use it in a way that is not even within the budget. It's not within the budget. When something happens now, we can vote for 14 billion and add it up to whatever we had before. That money has to be paid later on. It's going to be paid tomorrow. It's going to be paid in 50 years for the war. It's weapons will not make this country strong at all. What is going to make this country strong is the rule of law, starting with mitigation of that law that said white people are better than black people, and up to now they have done nothing to change it.
The war in Iraq, the narrative was that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, and so the U.S. had to intervene militarily, and they did. We realized later that when the United Nations weapon inspectors went there were no mass weapons of mass destruction. That was a lie.
The damage was already done, and innocent people have already died. So I don't
and no one was charged. No one was charged for war crime. Hold on. No U.S. leader, Bush at the time, was not charged for war crime, but Biden is calling for war crime for his friend Putin. Is he being selective here?
That's why I want for the United States to put his money to where his mouth is and put his mouth to where his money is.
I think that's what they are doing.
No. If you're calling for Putin to go for a war crime court, and you haven't even signed up to the war crime protocol or convention, then you don't respect the international order. How can you expect Putin to respect the international order?
So you think Joe Biden is bluffing here?
Joe Biden is not doing the right thing at all. That's why I'm challenging him to say the other presidents of the United States didn't do it. I want him to make a statement. He's going to be respected. I just saw very briefly a statement from I think Omar, the congresswoman in Minnesota.
In Minnesota, okay.
Talking about the hypocrisy of the United States in talking about war crime court for Putin without signing up to the war crime. And she's saying exactly what I'm saying. But how many people say that? Did CNN even carry that? BBC? No. They only want to carry anyone who will say, let's fight. Let's give more arms. That's justice.
You sure the media is the problem here, or part of the problem here?
Yes.
When they are just reporting what is happening, when they are just reporting what the U.S. government is doing, when they are just reporting what NATO is doing, some European leaders are doing, how are they the problem?
They are the problem because they're not speaking the truth. They are selective in what is going to get on the screen and what people are going to read. They set the agenda. In setting the agenda, they are working for the weapons company, and they are not supporting human life. Because look how many people died in Afghanistan during the war. Look how many people died in Syria during the war. Look how many people died in Iraq during the war. Look how many people died in Liberia during the war. How many people have died in Ukraine during the war. You know, if all these human beings are dying and these people who own the network just keep promoting weapons and weapons all the time, it's just so shameful. It's really shameful. But they can do it because we consume the media and we don't speak. We just watch it and we get angry in the corner. We need to speak out in the public and make them to know that the media is doing the right thing.
There is something you know of called the Magnitsky Act. The Magnitsky Act is a law that the U.S. government uses to go after corrupt leaders around the world. Talking about whether or not the U.S. is doing more for Liberia, we see Prince Johnson is on our list right now. Vani Sharma is on our list. His entire property has been confiscated by the U.S. government. So the U.S. government is doing its part here. Is that not enough?
It is not enough because when we had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report in Liberia, supported by everyone, the United States was not interested in the implementation of that report because of bias, because they favor someone or some people that were part of the issue that were sanctioned by the Truth and Reconciliation. So,
who are some of those people you're talking about?
Everyone that was involved in the war, including
give me some names here.
President Sieh, President Taylor, President Sieh, all of the people who were.
And why you think they did that?
Because the United States government is interested in American interests and not necessarily Liberian interests. The United States Embassy in Monrovia is not there Liberians have to push for Liberian interests. But if you sit and say, well, America is going to seek my interest, it's not going to happen because governments don't do that. Government only seek their own interest. And people have to stand up for their interest too. So the Liberians need to stand up for their interest and make that clear.
Thank you, folks. You are watching Focus on Liberia. I'm Ansony Sieh hosting. My guest is Reverend Torli Krua. He is a human rights activist from the Universal Human Rights Institution. Folks, if you are just joining us, we want to say welcome. We're going to take a short break here. And if you want to know the topic we are discussing, is America showing more goodwill for Ukraine over Liberia and the people of America? That is the topic. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll read a few comments and we will call it a day. A short break and we'll be right back.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm Ansony Sieh. Let's read some comments here quickly. Priscilla, you know, to write, Ansony, you are grouping refugees with a few overstayed Liberians. Yes, from Marquis Shinge, India request to stop war. Priscilla, again, Ansony, the United States claims to be a world power and global posture as a of democracy and freedom. I don't think we should compare their moral feelings. Little Liberia, to whom much is given, much is expected. I don't mean to excuse Liberia from our failure to honor signed treaties. From Moment Harris, sometimes war is inevitable in certain situations. Moment again writes, the Ukraine crisis is about the security of Europe. That's why the U.S. is highly vested. Mapu, great question. Mr. Host, very important and informative. Moment is basic. U.S. has a security interest with Europe. That is why they are highly involved in the Ukraine crisis. This one is from YouTube. The Batsieh, right? That's the last name. It's, I think, Nakwara Batsieh. What world do you live in? What world do you live in? Forget Liberia. Even African Americans in America come secondary than Ukraine. I'm just asking my question. Normal is basic. This is not a factual statement, my friend. While racism might be a factor, however, the main reason for the U.S. support is security interest. The U.S. don't have any interest in Liberia right now, so why pour their resources over there? Let's start with that one. The U.S. does not have any interest in Liberia. Why pour their resources there? It sounds to be true. Is it true?
That is totally untrue because as human beings, kingdoms rise and fall. And the Bible says righteousness exalts a nation. Any country that wants to excel and rise only solely on military force is going to collapse. United we stand, divided we fall. And so bringing people together because of their humanity is more important than economic interest or military interest. So I don't think that's a valid point.
Yeah, and then Priscilla is saying the U.S. is, claimed to be a world power and, for freedom and democracy. And she went on to say, to compare, Liberia and the U.S. and you look at the U.S. failure and you look at the Liberian failure. She went on to, even though to whom much is given, much is expected, she's making the case that it is more to Liberian than, in other words, she's saying Liberia has less. What more can it do with less? And, the U.S. is doing the best she can. And, Liberia have Liberia. So Liberians should take Liberia, take the responsibility for Liberia. Is she right? Or does she have a point?
I think Liberians should take responsibility for Liberia, but the United States should also take responsibility for its own actions in Liberia, just like the actions we're talking about now, where we are prioritizing sending weapons over signing treaties that make up the international order. It doesn't make sense to me or anyone else. I know.
So, President Ansony, you are regrouping refugees with a few overstayed Liberians. You want to address that? Because we are both familiar with the Liberian Refugee Fairness Act. We really
okay. So that person is completely ignorant of what she's talking about, because the thing that make a person a refugee is if you are driven from outside of your border. These people that I have met here left Liberia during the 2000-2002 war, and they went to Guinea, they went to other countries, and moving from country to country, arrived here after the deadline. They are refugees. They became refugees immediately once they crossed international border because of the situation in the country. They are still refugees of war. That's the status according to international law. In Lebanon, we still have Palestinian refugees that have been there for a long time. It's not because you stayed somewhere for a long time, so your status as a refugee, what made you to leave your country is what made you a refugee. And they are supposed to be protected by international law, and the United States is violating those laws because when they take one group of people to be more important than another group of people, they are violating the international law.
Reverend White, she might be talking about people who apply for a visiting visa, right? Either after the war or even if during the war, but if the person said, I'm going to the US for visit, and many of these people, they chose not to go back and they are overstayed their visa. I think she has a point. There are some people who overstay here and should not be considered a refugee, isn't it?
That is correct. People overstaying visa they're not necessarily a refugee, but the people I'm advocating for are people who left during the war. That's the people I'm advocating for. If somebody else didn't leave during the war, that's a totally different thing. But in making these laws, the way the precedents have been, is that anyone who's in the country at the time the law is brought into force, those people are covered. They happen for Chinese, they happen for a whole range of other people. Why should Liberians be the only exception? It doesn't make sense.
Our procedure came back, I think, with more clarity. Ansony, please consider wealth and resources distribution. Or we can't just say, but let Black people do their own, because I was saying that, look, the level playing field is even fairer. So let Black people compete. But she is saying, hey, how much money do Black people have compared to, Caucasian people? So either way, the fee is not as plain as you think it is. Does she have a point?
Yes, her point. Her point is reparation. See, in the Bible, there's a man called Zacchaeus who went and took a lot of stuff from people by crook, hook and crook. When he met Jesus, immediately people started to say, why is Jesus going to have dinner with a sinner? He said, I'm going to give back for what I've taken from people by crook, by hook or crook. The United States has not done that. European countries that had colonies all over the world, for centuries, they pillaged these countries, stole their resources, ill-treated the people, never brought education around the country, and they brought these golds and diamonds to enrich themselves. Today, they're using the same money to sanction other countries for the same behavior that they did before. So I think she has a point, and the solution to that is reparation. Those who stole should return what they stole, and it applies to all of the colonial groups.
So in other words, you are saying if these so-called world powers have any remorse whatsoever, and if they at least want to show some form of goodwill to people of African descent for the years of slavery and labor our forefathers labor in vain,
and colonization.
Let them give back in twofold, right? Is that why you're talking?
4-4.
4-4. What? That let them give him 4-4. So tell me, how do you want it to for that to happen? How should they do it?
First of all, they have to honor international order for peace and security by signing up to. I mean, people like Boris Johnson, these guys should be ashamed of themselves. Talking about they want to send refugees coming to UK, they want to send them to Rwanda. I don't know how they think at all, but somebody needs to tell them. We all need to tell them. If you, for 5 centuries, went around the world, took all the gold from there and carried to your country, and people are now coming, and then you're saying that these people who are coming now should go to Rwanda, it doesn't make sense at all. There has to be confession. There has to be repentance. There has to be reparation and restitution. You can't Zacchaeus cannot keep all the gold and the diamond that he stole and still claim to be a friend of Jesus. It has to start with the United States signing these protocols and these conventions. There's a reason why they haven't signed. And the reason they haven't signed is people on the street don't know that it's hurting us for the United States not to sign. How is it hurting us? All of the money that they are spending for these wars, they are mortgaging our future and the future of our children for these companies that are making these deadly weapons right here.
So this one is from Astron Jabba. He said the U.S. government allows us to travel to the USA to help land and build our country. That's enough. He emphasized with 3 exclamation points. Do you agree with him?
We don't have a country. We don't have a country because what we have is an entity created because of American colonization that was hidden in secrecy. Most Americans don't even know about Liberia, but it was the United States Act of Congress of March 26, 1790, and the United States Act of Congress on March 3, 1819 that created the Republic of Liberia before even the incorporation of the American Colonization Society. So if you don't know anything about that, you will say, oh, they allow us to come here, so that's good. Let's do what we can. It's not about that. You always got to go to the root causes of the problem. Why is it today that people from Japan can come here without visa? But every year, the U.S. is taking millions of dollars from poor Liberians, but the president of Liberia can come, the president's wife can come, the senator. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
I am still thinking about his statement. So they allow us to come. We have to apply for visa. We have to pay. We have to pay for our plane ticket. This war is for every human being, even though some group of people have their country. But we pay to travel. We come here. We go to school. We take student loan that we have to pay back anyway. And he said that is enough help for us to go back to our country. And that is the silver bullet. I don't see the logic in there. So we should just be dancing because out of a sudden we have in America, just by touching this soil, and just seeing America and learning here in America, that is it. Don't we need resources? Maybe he's saying we have the resources, the knowledge.
No, well, you see that he's coming from a perspective that, he's grateful for America, that he is no longer living in Liberia. He's here. He's having fun. He doesn't really care about the exploitation of people in Liberia having to spend $160 and being denied visa. He doesn't care about that. He doesn't really care whether that poor woman that came here in 2014, December, with her daughter from a war in Liberia, doesn't have health insurance. He doesn't really care about that. Once he's okay, he thinks it's enough. We're talking about justice. This country, before this country existed, there were human beings living here. And you go into over 300 Indian reservations, the people are still living in conditions that is substandard to the normal living condition here in this country. That is a problem. We need to treat other people the way we are expected to be treated. And Native Americans were not treated that way. African Americans were not treated that way. And Liberians are not being treated that way. It's not enough. We need to demand more justice and equity.
Armstrong, I want you to call, and because your statement is, I'm still processing it, and I don't really know how to respond to it or how to really explain it or make sense of it. So call my number here. We will connect you here to the speaker. We'll give you maybe a minute or two. I'm making an exception for you. Please call Armstrong if you can. Please call. And I mean,
He's happy.
He said the American allow us to come to their country. That is enough for us to go by and build.
Well,
so we all leave and go. Maybe he has a point.
For some of us now, we are Americans now. I'm American now. So it's my country now. And my country has to live by the golden rule. Do unto others as you have others do unto you. It's my country now because I live here. And as a person from a village, I need to shine. I need to speak out because the people here don't know how I got to this place. And they don't know what the condition that people are living in.
And it's not only Armstrong. Anyone who wants to call, we have about 5 minutes here to be 5 minutes to be here. You can call and we will allow you to participate as quickly as possible. Reverend Krua, while we wait, so the issue about visa waivers you have been advocating for as another way for the U.S. to show that it is for Liberia, it's there for Liberia. And you're not even stopping there. You are saying, hey, look, for the number of visas that were paid for, the U.S. should refund the money.
With interest.
Yeah, I mean, and also with interest. You think they're going to ever do this?
Oh, yeah. I believe they're going to do that. You see, when people from West Point start bringing their receipts of $160, people from Ansony Wayne start bringing their slave wage, start bringing their receipt for one man loved darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. They're not going to, once we start putting these things out with the stories, a young woman, 21 years old, died here in Massachusetts. She was in the United States Army, and her mother wants to come. Her mother has always been coming back and forth. She applies for visa. She gets denied. She cannot come for closure for her child's funeral. And she paid money for that. They paid like 5 family members that were coming. They ate all that money. If we put the storage together with the receipts, it's coming up to millions of dollars. United States government is going to act because light can do something. When people can do stuff in the darkness, they get away with it. But once you bring it in the light, they're going to want to behave better. Most people don't know the numbers. Most people don't know.
All right, let's take the final comments. It seems to be no one is willing to call. It's from Mr. Logan here. Africans or Black people will not be respected in any part of the world until Africans and Black people start to respect themselves and seek to build our Africa. A profound statement, and I couldn't agree more. That is one of the things that will make us to be respected by ourselves before even others can respect us. Your response?
Well, let me say this. I'm from the perspective of humanity, of our common humanity as human beings. Human beings are flawed. The Bible says, and I believe, there is none righteous, no, not one. So the problem is not unique to a particular tribe or a particular race or something. This is a human problem. And people have to be able to speak out. Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. He wasn't talking about Black people or white people alone. All over the world, that's what he said. So that statement is assuming that Black people look down on themselves. All Black people look down on themselves, which is not true. I'm Black, I don't look down on myself. I respect myself, respect my dad, respect my mom, respect my uncle. That's who I am. I'm Black. And so you don't bring one sweeping statement to say all Black people are not respecting themselves or all white people are this way. That's not what we're talking about. When people make specific laws to denigrate the color of any group of human beings, they need to be forced to mitigate that harm that they have unleashed and weaponized in the world. And that is why, again, we are calling on President Biden to be a man and to sign up to this. Or before he starts talking big about that man shouldn't be in power, let him consider signing up to these, signing and rectifying all these international conventions, including the Convention Against Torture, Civil Law Convention on Corruption, the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, optional protocol to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. My God, what is Biden waiting for? He's the
Thank you.
president.
Thank you. This will be the final comment for the day from Johnny Johnson. Yes, Ukraine is receiving billions of USA taxpayers' money, but not fair that there is a double standard for Black and white people. Facts. This is very wrong, and thank you. And he is thanking us that we are paying the taxes, Black and white. We are getting less. We're getting crushed with debt. The IRS is chasing everybody here that paying taxes and dishing the billions to the people of Ukraine just because they have crisis now. He couldn't be more right.
Crisis too.
And we are paying for the very crisis.
And worse, not only are we paying for our children will pay, our grandchildren will pay, our unborn children will pay for a very long time. And the people here in this community that are making these weapons, they will continue to get richer and richer, and the gap between the rich and the poor will grow wider and wider, bringing more conflict to this country, making the United States more unstable. United we stand, divided we fall. It's time for each one of us to speak out.
Yep. We are paying for the war. The war is causing deaths. The war is causing us to pay a higher price at the pump. The war is even contributing to inflation. We are getting cheated here. Why some gun manufacturers are getting more money. Now, there are minority communities here that are getting crushed. They are in the dirt, and the U.S. does not care. But the U.S. out of its own care for Ukraine because it's having crisis. Does America not see these crises that we have on our hands here in the U.S.? Does America not see the crisis in Liberia and any other places around the world that have been crying for help? And out of the sudden, it's prudent for them to act and swiftly with billions. This is sad. Reverend, let's get your closing statement because of time here.
1 million persons will be dying in the United States in a few weeks of COVID. 11 million people in the United States seeking asylum and refugees are undocumented, don't have permits to work, don't have health insurance. Their presence here is a health risk. We need a public health intervention from the president to grant temporary protected status to everyone as long as there is COVID. That's number one. Number two, we're calling on the president of the United States today, President Biden. We call on him to immediately make a case for the United States to sign and rectify all international treaties and conventions that make up our international order of peace and security. And without doing that, America is undermining the global order of peace by failing to sign these things. And some of them include the protocol to the Convention Against Torture, Civil Law Convention on Corruption, Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, optional protocol to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. These are very good common sense conventions and treaties that the United States of America has not signed on to at all. We are here, we are Americans, and most people don't even know that. So those of us who know we need to continue to speak out and call on the president to do his job. He was elected by the people. He needs to do what the people want, not what the weapon industry wants. That's my closing statement.
Thank you, Reverend Krua. And folks, this is how I will close. Like the people of Ukraine, Liberia had its own war. It was vicious. 250,000 of our fellow citizens paid the ultimate price. The almighty America, Liberia's, some people disagree with this, but I'm going to use it it is expedient for my closing yet. Liberia's father, historically speaking, though the nation existed, the people were there, but the name Liberia came about because leaders in the U.S. decided to move some Black people in a place now called Liberia to establish a free nation for Black people. So we can say America made some efforts in establishing the country Liberia. That country had a brutal civil war, America, in my opinion, spent little or nothing to rebuild that country. It did not feel the need to do so. Did America show Liberians and Liberia love? Somebody will say no. They show us some peanuts. Here is Ukraine, a war that is just less than 2 months old, billions flying from Congress, some of which being paid by Liberians who are working here day and night. Did America show Liberia love? Somebody listening to me must say, whoa, your leaders can do for you? You want America to do for you? Yes. Why not? Isn't she doing, talking about America, doing for the people of Ukraine? Isn't America doing for the people of Israel? About 80 billion is being pumped into Israel every day. So why not Liberia too? That is my argument. You see, I'm winning here. $80 billion or more every year for the people of Israel. So why can't America give Liberia at least 10 billion every year? If you look at the traditional tie that America have had with the Liberian people and Israel, it's synonymous. So if they are giving Israel this much more money, the question is why? Is it interest? Are the people of Israel better than the people of Liberia? So that history that we have means nothing to them. So America has not shown Liberia love enough, but it is showing the people of Ukraine love that is just having a war less than 2 years, 2 months old. Our war was brutal. Our infrastructure got destroyed. We didn't get that much help. The donor conference only raised 500 million, less than $1 billion, folks. The U.S. in less than 2 weeks approved 14 billion for the people of Ukraine. I think they are showing the people of Ukraine love. They are showing the people of Israel love. They are even showing the people of Egypt love. Then my Liberia. America, how can you do that to us? But again, I can't beat on America. It is their money. They can decide how they spend it. But they should not be selected there where they are morally wrong. And to my leaders, why are you up to? There's so much goodwill here. Engage the Americans. Talk to them as leaders. Borrow billions from them. Let build Liberia. Maybe we can pay later, or maybe we shouldn't pay at all. After all, there was something called slavery. Our forefathers were brought to this land. They were enslaved. They labored for 100+ years. They did not get a dime back. Maybe we can tell America too, we're not paying you because you have not paid for the labor our forefathers gave to you that built this country. Somebody might think I'm preaching Pan-Africanism. Maybe I do. Maybe it will get us somewhere. But I'll leave America alone and I'll talk to our leaders, get it together. You are not getting it together, and that is shameful. You are more of the problem for us than even America is. So it is about time that you stand up. But America, I'm going to close with this. You are showing Ukraine love than Americans. You are showing Ukraine love than America. It is about time you show Americans love who are paying the money that you are spending in Ukraine anyway, for which they have to pay a higher price at the pump. Americans are getting cheated. I'm getting cheated. Liberians are getting cheated. Biden, rise up and get it done. We didn't elect you to just beat around the bush. It's about action now. You need to take action, Joe Biden. My guest is clapping for me, but I have to leave this sermon alone because my cartoon is waiting for me. Reverend Krua will do this again. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. That was inspirational.
This is how we will close the broadcast for today. The song says we are all Liberians, and we are all Americans too, because Liberians too are American, historically speaking, and some of us got a paper, right? And we work here and we pay taxes. So the song "We Are All Liberians" will close us. Bye-bye, folks. My cartoon is waiting for me.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.